I always believed that when it comes to being in nature, you're going to come across the best out there, but also the worst. The outdoors has a way of drawing in amazing, inspiring people wanting to escape the rat race and enjoy nature, as well as those wanting to disconnect and carry out evil in remote places where no one can stop them. It's said by psychics and mediums that evil is drawn to abandoned, isolated places like cemeteries, abandoned buildings, or the woods. I don't believe that the setting in any of these tragedies I'm about to share has much to do with what happened, other than isolation providing the opportunity for evil. Take an island, for example, a beautiful island out in the ocean. On its own, it's peaceful until the creeps get there. Isolation is key to what these cases have in common. I don't believe in remote places being out in nature have anything to do with causing evil to take over in people, if that makes sense. I don't think there's any demons in the shadows waiting for their next victim. I think it just provides an outlet for evil, a sort of escape route. Camping, hiking solo, especially for women, and van life tends to get negativity because of these types of cases. It's true, being out on the road has its risks, but evil crimes can happen anywhere. Heavily populated areas like cities, homes, churches, even the most wealthy, beautiful places in the world. I by no means am trying to scare anyone out of van life or hiking. Just a few years ago, I myself was trying to get into van life, and I was even posting videos about it and being out in nature alone. I originally wanted my channel to be about living and camping with an SUV and adventures out on the road. And it didn't work out, but that doesn't mean I still don't want to try again in the future, even after my failed attempts and new anxieties. I have to admit, though, with how the world is turning lately, I feel less safe being out there alone now more than ever. It appears also that the law is actively making it harder to live this lifestyle as well. More places that used to be van life friendly are increasingly reporting to have changed in the last few years, especially in the US. And I get that it's been ruined by a few bad apples that leave trash and disrupt the area, but I think it's more than that. With a lack of housing and the prices of everything getting higher, I think they want to deter more people from choosing this lifestyle so as to not, I quote, disrupt the people who can afford housing and live a more typical lifestyle. Not that everyone has a choice, Many times living in a vehicle is safer than the streets and homeless shelters. The first tragedy is actually not van life related, but an ongoing unsolved murder of a couple shot in a remote area on August 12th, 2019. The bodies of 42-year-old Stacy Rickard and 43-year-old Jeremy David Merchant were found early that morning, shot to death in a desolate shooting range in Mount Hood National Forest. Their bodies were discovered in a gravel pit used for recreational shooting just off 4615 Road and the 130 Spur in Mount Hood National Forest in Clackamas County, about 5 miles east of the Promontory Park, a beautiful, highly rated campground. Their sweetback dog, Talladega, was the only survivor, found unharmed but scared near the bodies of his owners. With the help of deputies and investigators, then used a drone to distract him while sleeping in a catchpole over his neck. Poor Talladega must have been terrified. He is now back with the family of the victims, thank God. Jeremy and Stacy were a couple from Estacada, Oregon, around an hour from Mount Hood. Their daughter spoke out, saying that it wasn't unusual for her parents to go out to the forest. They would often make the drive out from Estacada to pick up their spent shell castings to turn in for cash. She believes they were targeted for reasons that she can't pinpoint. Their deaths have been hard on the family, as you can imagine. Were they targeted randomly or by someone they knew? This case makes me wonder if it was, at first, an accidental shooting. One of my favorite places I used to walk was a popular unofficial shooting area off an abandoned logging road. Well, it wasn't popular, but it was popular for shooting. I could definitely see how an accident could have happened there, especially being that they're pretty desolate areas. Could their killer have accidentally shot one of them first and out of fear of being caught, shot the other witness? That may have been why they left the dog. This is just a theory. If they went there often, maybe they met someone there that was unhinged and wanting to take out their anger. I think it's a good chance that maybe their killer had been there before. Maybe they were even familiar with this person or persons, and it's probably not out of the realm of possibility that they still go to that place to this day. As of making this episode, the Clackamas County Sheriff's Office is still actively investigating the murders. Crime Stoppers is offering a $2,500 reward for information leading to an arrest and conviction. Tips can be left by calling 503-723-5949. Dyslexia. Hate it. Anyway, the second tragedy is no less chilling. This is what made me stop going on trails alone, though I know neither of the victims in this case would want that. This case I'm going to talk about is the Devil's Den murders. Before I get into this, I stopped to wonder, why do so many trails and national parks have the name hell and devil in them? I found that the names mostly come from the 19th century settlers who used the terms to describe the unusual landscapes. Their names were confused with mistranslations of Native American spiritual sites more often than not, as rugged landscapes were associated with the supernatural. There's so many examples I could use, but probably the most famous being the Devil's Tower in Wyoming. Lieutenant Colonel Richard Dodge gave it the name Devil's Tower in 1875 for reasons not quite clear, but to me seemed like a careless mistranslation. Local tribes such as the Cheyenne historically called it Bear Lodge or Bear's Teepee, that is based on their culture, a holy place rather than evil. Many speculate that Bigfoot and other cryptids play a part in these names. And while I think there's definitely something to that, I can see how dangerous, unusual landscapes people want to avoid could be called devil in those times, as a way of warning people of venturing there. Nowadays, it's concerning that names with hell and evil might sound like an invitation to the wrong type of people. Devil's Den is a stunning national park in the state of Arkansas with unique caverns and rock formations, lakes and rivers with trails leading to the Ozarks. The pictures are beautiful and appear to be magical. The Brink family had just moved to the area from South Dakota to the small city of Prairie Grove in northwest Arkansas. 43-year-old Clinton Brink and his wife, 41-year-old Kristen, loved exploring new places with their two daughters, ages 7 and 9. On Saturday, July 26, 2025, they went to set off for a fun, beautiful day on the trails of Devil's Den when the unthinkable happened. Around 2:30 that afternoon, Arkansas police were notified of a homicide at the park. Clinton and Christian were found deceased on the walking trail about half a mile into the park. Clinton was attacked first by the unhinged young man with a knife. Christian bravely made the quick decision to abandon her husband and to bring her children to safety before returning back to him when she was also fatally stabbed. I just cannot imagine what that must have been like in those moments. It was her act of bravery that saved their children, as I believed that they were the intended targets. Investigators say this act of evil was completely random, as the family had just moved to the area, as well as their killer, Andrew McGann. McGann had been a teacher placed on administrative leave for inappropriate interaction with students with concerns related to classroom management and student favoritism. One of his students described him as cold and disinterested. His mother had reported McGann to the principal as his behavior had been upsetting to her child. McGann passed all background checks when moving from school to school in different states. He had not yet started his job in Arkansas at Springdale Public Schools when the evil inside him had completely taken over, no more evident by the permanent scowl on his face and cold, sunken eyes. Those who knew him growing up said he was pretty normal, did well in school, and was on the baseball team, except for an explosive temper, and apparently he had withdrawn in his later years. McGann was found on Wednesday at a barbershop in Springdale, around 30 miles from the park, as if nothing had happened. He was arrested while getting a haircut. He has been charged with 2 counts of capital murder and is being held without bond after entering a non-guilty plea in August of 2025. I'm not sure if age has anything to do with it, but he was in his late 20s, about 28, when this accident happened. Murder. It was no accident. He had gone in there prepared for what had happened. This case stopped me in my tracks last summer. It was so random, so unhinged, so tragic. I can't imagine how this will affect their family for the rest of their lives, the family of the victims, and even his own family. As you can see, whatever evil energy had been brewing inside him had been there long before he stepped foot into the forest, covered in clothing from head to toe on a hot day with a knife. He was prepared and ready to cause harm and unleash the hell that was already in his mind. The randomness of this case reminds me of the Delphi murders of 13-year-old Abby Williams and 14-year-old Libby German by the Monon High Bridge, where they went for a walk on the 13th of February in 2017. Their bodies were found on Valentine's Day. Again, their killer was ready and prepared that day for whatever was on his path. It makes me wonder if the girls were his only victims. For years after, he had returned back into society working as a CVS pharmacy clerk with no prior criminal record and lived in their town as if nothing had ever happened. This is similar to the killer in the next case. 48-year-old Sunshine, nicknamed Sunny Stewart, was a fiercely independent woman. Nothing fazed her. She spent her life working as a fisher, boat captain, carpenter, and bartender, setting off on adventures often alone. She was a seasonal resident at the Micmac family campground and was planning a 4th of July gathering with her family, an event that by no means should have raised a single red flag. Sometime on the evening of July 2nd, she went paddleboarding alone on Crawford Pond in Union and never returned. A friend who was staying with her reported her missing after finding her dog alone. Search crews, including game wardens, descended on the Micmac Cove campground on Crawford Pond. They found her paddleboard first and her body shortly after, sometime after 1 a.m. July 3rd, near a 100-acre island in Crawford Pond. It tragically appeared she had been strangled with blunt force trauma. Racist remarks were made about the case on social media, with people claiming they believed the murderer could have been an illegal immigrant from South America. No one could have imagined who her killer turned out to be, not an adult, not a child. 17-year-old Devin Young was camping with his family for 2 whole weeks during the investigation, as if nothing was wrong. He acted completely normal, even offering to help, as in leading officers away from the direction of where her body was found. Surveillance footage showed Devin went out on his aluminum motorboat before Sunshine did. This alarmed the state police. On the night of July 16th, he was further questioned for 2 hours before being arrested. The owner of the campground, Catherine Lund, insisted that Young had never caused any trouble before, dismissing posts online that Devin Young had been kicked out of the campground before for harming others. No one, it appeared, came out with any concerns about Devin staying at the campground, but there were many online who had a lot more to say about him. People took to social media stating their own concerns about Devin, insisting that he had been kicked out of the campground before. They claimed that he had a violent history against people and children. Reviews that were once online claimed that at one time he did try to drown kids in a pool, apparently. Those who allegedly found his TikTok said it was full of violent comments towards women. During the 2 weeks after Sunny's murder, Devin's actions were never suspicious, Lunt said. He would offer to assist other campers with loose pets, yard work, and made wood crafts, which he gave to other campers. We as a campground community are devastated that he continued to camp life among us as normal, and we suspected nothing. It is heart-wrenching and terrifying that we had no idea the murderer was among us, as we were looking for a stranger. This case is beyond disturbing. Sunshine Stewart was killed at a family campground by a pudgy white boy you would hardly suspect, if not for his vacant eyes. She was a fun, bright spirit, loved dearly by friends and family, no longer here because of a random, senseless act of evil. The next tragedy is more of a targeted act of hate, but no less shocking. On August 18th, 2021, 24-year-old Kylan Schulte and her 38-year-old wife, Crystal Turner, were found deceased in a creek close by their campsite in Moab, Utah, from gunshot wounds, only about 4 months after their wedding. The last time anyone reported seeing them was 5 days earlier, on August 13th, around 9:30, at a nightclub called Woody's Tavern in Moab. Witnesses at the bar described them as inseparable lovebirds, focusing more on each other than others. No one had reported seeing anyone follow them out that night, but they did hear about who the couple called a creepy man lurking around their campsite. It's reported that they left their camper van parked outside of the McDonald's in the parking lot where Crystal worked, and they took their car to their tent campsite at the La Salle Mountains, a popular area near the Arches National Park. Kylan's father in Montana started making calls when he hadn't heard from her in 3 days. He called friends in the area, worried sick. The last he heard from his daughter was that she and Crystal were moving their campsite due to who they called a creeper dude lingering around. The friend remained in close contact with Kylan's father as they went looking for their campsite. She was on the phone with him when she found his daughter's remains in a creek and fled the scene out of fear. It appeared nothing had been stolen. All their vehicles had been accounted for, and their rabbit, Ruth, was left unharmed. Officers tried to tell the public that there was no danger, but locals were skeptical that they were just saying that, so it would not affect tourism. This case happened around the time of Gabby Petito's murder by her fiancé, Brian Laundrie, a van life tragedy that captured the world's attention. Some had even claimed they thought that Brian was Crystal and Kylan's killer, that he had just got to them on the way of his escape, possibly. The day before Kylan and Crystal were last seen alive, Kylan and Crystal, both of them, apparently had witnessed a fight between Gabby and Brian in front of the Moonflower, where Kylan worked. Another witness called 911. It was this incident that investigators could determine that Laundrie was not involved in this case. In December of 2022, the case was finally closed when Adam Pinkowitz was found to be the killer. Unfortunately, it was too late for an arrest. Adam had deleted himself in a hotel room in an Iowa motel on September 24th, 2021. Investigators had no clue he was dead until late March of 2022. Adam worked with Crystal at the McDonald's, often making derogatory comments towards her and other employees. Due to the 2019 sickness, it's likely because they were wearing masks at the time that Crystal didn't recognize him at the campsite. So that's why she probably only referred to him as the creeper. The key evidence was footage of his car, a Toyota Yaris, leaving the couple's campsite after their murder, specific shell castings, and sightings of a man of his exact description. In this case, evil stirred at a place of employment and followed them to a remote place, completely unexpected. This next case deals more with being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Dean Lucas and Adam Coleman, both 33, were lifelong friends. In the fall of 2015, the Australians loaded their surfboards into their Coleman's 1992 Chevy van and drove from the Canadian Rockies south to the Pacific coast. The trip to Baja was what they believed was to be a last chance to catch some waves before life took them on different paths. There, the waves were perfect. For a week, they camped on the beautiful remote beaches and planned to take a ferry across the Gulf of California, the bay that separates the U.S. from the Mexican mainland. It was just before midnight when Lucas and Coleman made it there. They soon started on the desolate Benito Juarez toll road with no way of knowing just how dangerous it was. There was no one to warn them that in the last 2 years, at least half a dozen travelers had been murdered on the road that locals called the Highway of Death. It's believed that the crime spike is a result of a clash between Mexican authorities and U.S. anti-drug forces. With the leaders of the original gangs gone, stranglers left orphaned, turning to robbery to survive. Lucas and Coleman were well-traveled, yet sometimes plans change quickly and there's no way to know ahead of time what exactly you're getting into. The Highway of Death is only a few hours from Mazatlan and Puerto Vallarta coastal resort towns. In early December of 2015, their van was found burned on the side of the tractor path with their camping supplies and their bodies inside. It appeared they had fought back on an attempted robbery. Mexican authorities arrested 3 men who had confessed. They belonged to a gang and used police uniforms and sirens to stop their victims. This case is often mistaken for another very similar case of the 3 Australian tourists found dead in a well while on a camping and surfing trip in Ensenada, I'm so sorry if I said that wrong, on May 2nd of 2024. They were brothers, 30-year-old Jake and 33-year-old Caleb Robinson, and their American friend, 30-year-old Jack Carter Road. The robbers were after the tires on their vehicle, and they were killed in resisting the attempt. Another body was also in the well where their bodies were found, but unconnected. This case comes more as a shock, as the area around Ensenada was considered a safer place for surfers and California tourists. In November of 2025, a 23-year-old woman, Ari Giselle Silva, pleaded guilty and is serving 20 years. She had texted the robbers involved saying that the tourists had good phones and tires and that she knew that they were camping in a remote area. She was the romantic partner to one of the 3 suspects who were awaiting trial. This last case is one that makes me hesitant about van life. Lucas Fowler and China Desi, I'm sorry if I pronounced that wrong, had traveled the world and were ready for an adventure in Western Canada in a 1986 blue Chevy van. Lucas was a 23-year-old Australian man with a bright smile and long blonde hair. He spent much of his life camping and enjoying the outdoors with his family. China was a 24-year-old ball of sunshine born in North Carolina with a passion for traveling. Their paths crossed while they were traveling in Croatia. The happy, loving pair quickly became inseparable, spending hours on the phone when they were apart. They were able to spend Christmas together in the U.S. before Fowler went to work on a ranch in rural British Columbia, where she would later join him to start an adventure traveling in the van. They were last seen the evening of July 13th, 2019 at a gas station in Fort Nelson, British Columbia. A security camera captured a photo of them in a loving embrace before heading back on the road. 36 hours later, around 7 a.m., July 15th, a highway worker found their bodies on the side of an Alaskan highway, not far from Lard Hot Springs, a travel stop in northern British Columbia, as well as the Highway of Tears, where at least 18 women disappeared, some found murdered. Lucas and China were found 16 feet from each other in a ditch close by the van. They had visibly been shot. It appeared they had been murdered sometime between the 14th and the 15th of July. The van's back doors were left open with the windows smashed. Passerbys Curtis and Sandra Broughton are said to have met the couple shortly before their deaths. They pulled over to help Lucas and China after their van had broken down on the side of the road. But the cheery couple said that they knew how to fix it and were having a picnic while waiting for the van to unflood before trying to start it again. Sandra quoted, "We were there to help them, but yet that same day the complete opposite of humanity hurt them like that and killed them so tragically." Fowler's parents traveled from Australia to bring him home. While there, his father, a police officer in New South Wales, was able to help with the case. While researching this, I initially believed the sweet, joyful couple were the only victims, but I was sadly mistaken. On the 19th of July, a burning pickup truck was found abandoned by Dease Lake, British Columbia, where police found an unidentified body nearby. It wasn't until the next day when they identified the body of a 64-year-old Leonard Dyke, a white-bearded botany professor of the University of British Columbia with a love for studying nature, particularly seaweed. The police identified the drivers of the burning vehicle and announced to the public to be on the lookout for a couple of teenagers, 19-year-old Cam McLeod and 18-year-old Brian Smesky, so sorry if I mispronounced that, from Port Alberni, Vancouver, who were believed to be missing and possibly had fallen victim to the mysterious killer. Police made the shocking announcement on July 23rd that the teenagers were not the victims, but actually the killers and were on the run. It is not known how Leonard died or how he came in contact with the teenagers who were eventually found. The teens drove Leonard's gray Toyota RAV4 almost 2,000 miles across Canada to the east. On July 23rd, the car was found burning next to Fox Lake Cree Nation, north of Manitoba, where the manhunt finally came to an end. On August 7th, the bodies of Cam and Briar were found in the woods with self-inflicted gunshot wounds. Cam and Briar left video recordings confessing to the murders with no motive and expressed zero remorse. Again, here we have a case that these kids, they thought up of this whole thing before even going out on the road and wherever they were looking for victims. Before I end this, I want to say that in no way is my intention to scare anyone out of following their dreams. So many people of all ages, handicapped, families, single women, spend years to decades on the road, exploring and living their best life. Camping, traveling, and van life are incredible experiences that nothing else can give you. We only have one life, and it should be spent doing the things we love. I won't let cases like this stop me if one day I do decide to try van life again. None of the victims would want that for us. All I'm saying is to please be careful. Use your intuition, trust your gut. I think if you can do that, as well as keep your vehicle maintained and know how to change, tire, keep a low profile, have your head on a swivel. Unfortunately, you have to do that. You really have to have your head on a swivel when you're out there like that. And have plans in case of an emergency. Things like that can keep you much safer. So even if you have all those things, things can and do go wrong. As I said in the beginning, the outdoors has a way of drawing in two types of people. The ones looking to harm are looking for an outlet, a punching bag, And that's why I believe they're drawn to remote areas, and whoever they stumble across is who their victim will be. The criminals are typically drawn to isolation to carry out their crimes. Beyond that, nature is cruel but also beautiful and healing, a place where people can take a deep breath and quiet their mind. Studies show that exposure to trees significantly reduces stress, lowers blood pressure, and cortisol levels, so please, don't let stories like this deter you from being out in nature. I am deeply sorry for everyone affected by these awful crimes. May the victims rest in peace. Stay safe out there. I'll see you in the next one.